I am Dr. Jimmy Mathew, and today we will look at why that mystery of why Kerala is having so many COVID cases now, even after it has died down, or it seemed to have died down over the most of the states outside Kerala. See, is it really a mystery? I don't think so. When you consider the first wave itself, Kerala had a prolonged period of transmission around 1 to 2 months after it had died down in other states, most of the other states. It has to do, I firmly believe, with the epidemiology of any disease. See, why do we talk about waves happening? COVID wave, the first wave, the second wave, etc. See, when this was first found out by a 19th century statistician in England, when he looked at the smallpox outbreaks that occurred at that point of time, he found out that, kind of the cases peak like a graph like that, reach a crescent and then slowly peter out into a wave. What happens is that whenever there is a transmission, the disease increases like this. 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, etc. Now, the speed with which this happens depends on a quantity called effective R, or a reproductive number, or that refers to how many cases each case gives rise to by infection. This depends on the virus or the bacteria or the infecting agent itself, as well as human behavior and our ways to prevent it, and also the susceptibility of the individuals involved in the population. So, the susceptibility is a very important thing. So, that is one of the key things here, the behavior as well as the susceptibility of the individuals. When there are more susceptible individuals and our behavior is not appropriate, the transmission is very rapid, leading to a large rise in cases. What happens is that when the virus spreads through the population, a lot of people get the disease very rapidly. But as the number of people who gets the disease increases, percentage increases, the transmission slows down, because these people are relatively immune to the disease again, at least for a prolonged period of time. We know for COVID, there is definitely a protection, sometimes even more than one dose of the vaccine for after contracting COVID to acquiring the infection again. So, this is what happens. So, when the transmission starts in the community, it slowly rises, reaches a crescendo, and when most of the people, depending on the R, effective R, when a particular percentage of the people have got the disease, it slowly dissipates. So, what has happened? This is what we call by flattening the curve. So, when you flatten the curve, it goes, usually, suppose without any behavioral measures to prevent the disease, it becomes like that, and then it has a steep slope. At the apex of the slope, there are a lot of infections and disease, so that the health systems and capacity of the health systems are overwhelmed, and people can die on the streets without oxygen and all that, which we saw in many places in India, and then it comes down. But in Kerala, what has happened, I firmly think, depending on our knowledge so far, is that the curve has become flattened. So, instead of a peak upswing and a downswing, it has become flattened like this and prolonged. Naturally, it will be prolonged. So, this is why Kerala still has got cases. But the benefit of a flattening of the curve is that the health system capacity is never overwhelmed, and everybody has oxygen and enough ICU beds are there. This brings down the death rate, and that has been the case in Kerala. There has not been a panic like what happened in other states. So, this is the very basics of what has happened. And how do we know this? We can know this by antibody surveys. Antibody surveys tell us how many percentage of people had got the disease in each wave. So, after the first wave, we find that Kerala had an antibody percentage of around 12% of people. So, 12% got the disease, it seems to be. and most of the other states it looks like around 20 to 25% got the disease. So we had a lot more susceptible population in Kerala, which is potentially dangerous for a second wave, which was. So now even after the second wave has sort of flattened out in most of the other states, when we look at the antibody survey, Kerala has got around 40% of people infected, while most of the other states have got 70%, 75% and even 80%. So this is the reason, primary reason that Kerala has got enough cases. I mean cases even now. So it is not because Kerala was unsuccessful, but that Kerala was actually quite successful in controlling or decreasing the transmission rate of the disease. And this is shown by data and antibody surveys too.